Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today I have two exclusive spoilers from Shadows of the Galaxies to show you. Um, about 6 months ago, I was reviewing every single card of Spark of the Rebellion, and I was putting my reviews on Reddit. And little did I know that 6 months from there, I'll be showing off cards that nobody has ever seen. So I'm super grateful from FFG to give me that opportunity. And I'm very excited to show to the community two additional cards for this great game. So without further ado, let's go into the first card. That is going to be a card called Pillage. So since nobody has ever seen those cards, I for once gonna describe exactly what they do. It's a 4 resources event that has one aggression aspect requirement. It is a tactic, and it reads: choose a player. They discard 2 cards from their hands. So it is a pretty straightforward card discard effect, right? You play the card and you discard 2 cards from your opponent's hand. So let's see what we can say about this card. So the first thing you can say is that it's a card that doesn't have. So it's also a common, just so you know. Um, it's a card that doesn't have an impact on the board. So Star Wars Unlimited is a game that is a very board-centric game, and therefore, whenever you're playing a card and it doesn't have an impact on the board, it can sometimes be a problem in many matchups, especially if you're playing against aggro. So most of the time, cards that don't have an impact on the board are going to be more difficult to justify. Are they going to be niche to a certain kind of matchups where maybe the board is not that important and it's all about the value and trying to grind out your opponent. So this by itself is going to make the card fairly niche because there's going to be tons of matchup where you cannot afford to play something that costs 4 that has no impact on the board. So the second thing we can say about this card is that it trades card advantage for tempo, which is something I've said before, and I say it again. In a generally speaking, card that in Star Wars Limited that trade tempo, which means that you have to spend an entire turn of 4 resources in order to trade 1 card for 2 cards. So this is a card advantage that you're doing by trading 1 card for 2 cards, but you're also losing tempo by spending a 4 resources card that doesn't even have any impact on the game. Generally speaking, cards that trade card advantage for tempo are not really that good. So we have the example of Mission Briefing. That's for 3 resources. You play this card, you draw 2 cards, and this card does not see any competitive play in Constructed, and even in Limited, it's not a card that you're not super happy to put in your deck. With all that being said, so now we talked about the negative. Let's talk about the positive now. So the good thing about Pillage is that discarding 2 cards from the opponent's hands is much better than drawing 2 cards from the top of your deck. And the reason for this is because if you play Pillage at the right time, you can basically deny the 2 most powerful cards of your opponent's hand. So if you play this card when your opponent has only 2 cards in hand, most of the time people play their cards, and the card that they keep in their hand are going to be their most powerful card because they're going to be the card that they're planning to keep for next turn. And more than likely, it's a card that they've been keeping for multiple turns. And those cards are very likely to be powerful. There's going to be your top curve, your Vaders, your Super Laser Blast, that kind of thing. The card that really is going to turn the tide in his favor. And if you're playing the Pillage at the right moment and able to discard 2 very powerful cards, you can put yourself in a very good position. So it is powerful in a sense that it can, if you play it at the right moment, denying the 2 most powerful cards of your opponent's deck. Another use of this card that can also be very good is if you're in top deck mode, both players are drawing 2 cards per turn, and you can play and you have the initiative, and you can just play this card to discard the 2 cards that your opponent just drew, and this way you can basically blank their entire turn. Essentially, they cannot play anything on that turn because you've basically discarded the only 2 possible plays that they had, which is a very, very strong play. So that's basically 2 situations in which Pillage can be very good. Obviously, I think this card is most likely going to be powerful against deck that are based on control decks, control that really are not really having much board presence, but you want to be attacking their hand rather than attacking their board. And in that context, Pillage can be very powerful. We've already seen Forced Surrender being a very powerful card against control because it gives you this very strong card advantage. But Forced Surrender costs 6, and Forced Surrender requires you to attack with a unit and deal damage to the enemy base to be played. So Pillage is essentially a much easier full surrender to play because you can play it with initiative right away, and that's I think makes this card significantly easier to use than full surrender. In my opinion, probably better because it doesn't have this requirements. The control deck can easily prevent you from dealing damage to them, and you won't always be able to play full surrender. While Pillage can be played, no question asked, which I think is very strong. So basically, how I imagine this card can be played, I think it can be played in as a sideboard card against control, and I also can imagine this card being played in a discard focused deck. So now we're seeing a multitude of different cards that can discard, and we've seen also a unit that can deal damage. I forgot the name of the unit, so I'm sorry about that. But basically, a unit that can deal damage to the enemy for every time you discard a card. And there are like other cards that discards in this game. So building a basically discard focused deck might be possible in this new set. So now we talk to Pillage. I'm just gonna commit to a rating on this card. Once again, it is a first impression rating. I've never played with this card, so obviously take this with a grain of salt. But I've rated this card a 5 out of 10. It is going to be a niche card, but I think it is likely to see competitive play, which I think is very awesome. Moving on to our second spoilers, it is called Unrefusable Offer. And this card is a bounty that costs 2 resources. It has the cunning aspect requirement, and it is an upgrade. It can only attach to non-leader units, and it reads attached unit gains bounty. Play this unit for free under your control. It enters play ready. At the start of the regroup phase, defeat it. And it is a bounty condition and gives +0/+0 stats, and it is a rare. So this is another bounty effect, but this one is very unique. It allows you to the unit that got defeated, you can play it on your side, and you can basically attack with that unit or do whatever you want to do with that unit. And at the end of the recruit phase, you will defeat it. So this card is relatively hard to evaluate, and definitely FFG has not given me an easy card to review because this card is quite complex and very unique. Therefore, it is relatively difficult to predict how powerful it's going to be. But my assumption is that this card is going to be quite good in a tempo deck. So I think it is definitely a tempo card because I don't think you can. So no, the ability to steal an opponent unit just for one turn and be able to attack with that unit for one turn is an effect that you want to have in an aggro deck because obviously you are only temporarily obtaining the unit, and most likely you want to be attacking with that unit. Ideal scenario, of course, is to attack with a unit that you've stolen into another unit to do a trade, but that's not always going to be you're not always going to have the opportunity to do that. So yeah, cards like, for example, Change of Heart have been very much tempo cards that are used to be as finishers. But it is a Change of Heart that is significantly cheaper, but it is also requires you to defeat the unit in order to be able to collect the bounty. So those are two conditions that require you to play a tempo deck because tempo deck are the only kind of deck that are going to be wanting to steal a unit for one turn, but at the same time are going to need a removal to be able to trigger the bounty. So you cannot. I don't think you can really play this card in a real aggro deck because aggro deck, generally speaking, do not want to defeat enemy units most of the time. So I think it's most likely going to have to be played in some sort of or maybe in a boba deck as a way to basically as a way to get some extra punch. So it is definitely going to be an interesting card, and it's going to be very difficult to know if this card is going to be playable before actually playing it. It has a good combination with Spare the Target. So Spare the Target, remember, it's the new Waylay that allows you to collect the bounty when it's triggered. The advantage of Spare the Target is that normally the card is supposed to return into your opponent's hand, but this time it's not going to return because you're going to be triggering the bounty, and then you're going to be able to get the unit under your control. And the advantage of Spare the Target is that it can get rid of unit of any size. It can get rid of unit of any size, making the stealing effect even more powerful. So another thing we can say about this card is that it is a very good counter to units that are very powerful when defeated ability. So for example, if you play this card on Cobb Veins, you play the bounty, then you defeat the card, you take the control of the card, you get to play the card for free, and I think you get to deny effectively So the defeat effect will trigger anyway, but you will still going to be able to get Veins, attack with him, and then when Veins gets defeated, you're going to be able to trigger his effect. So stealing units that are powerful when defeated effect is going to be quite good. Also, everybody is thinking probably about Super Laser Technician, which is another unit that has a powerful when defeated effect that might pair very well with Unrefusable Offer. But I'm not quite sure which one triggers first, so maybe someone is more informed about me about the rules will be able to tell me what happened when this triggers with Super Laser Technician. I haven't shown this card to anyone else, so I haven't been able to interact with other members of the community about this, but would be interested to know what happens whenever you still does the one defeated effect of Super Laser Technician takes over and the card is face down, or do you get to play the card and therefore deny the resource of your opponent? It is hard to say, but if that works like this could be quite powerful as well. Anyway, it's a very interesting card, and I cannot wait to try it out because this is definitely something that is very different from anything we've seen, and there's going to be a lot of interesting applications. So, um, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the two cards that I have to reveal. So I'm just going to commit just for the end for a rating on this card. As I said, very difficult card to rate because I think it's going to be quite played. But is it going to be played outside of bounty decks, or is it going to be played in bounty decks as well? It is hard to say, but I'm going to give this the same rating as I've given to most powerful bounty cards, and I'll give it a 7 out of 10 because I think, at the very least in the bounty deck, I think it's going to be quite good, and I think it might see play in tempo decks as well. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed those two new cards, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe, support my work, and I'll see you next time.